There are plenty of places you could go for a coffee, but there's only one place that serves you coffee with a purpose. You may be thinking, how can I help someone who's struggling with depression and the loss of a loved one during the holidays? Well, one simple way you can start is by communicating with that person. The County Commission has recently approved a grant that will allow Dougherty County EMS to receive more Narcan. This comes as a result of the rise in fentanyl cases in the city. Incidents with sudden cardiac arrest in younger people like Buffalo Bills player DeMar Hamlin and college basketball star Bronny James have called for an increase in accessibility to AEDs, AED training, and high-quality CPR. While the robot that won this year's competition is on the way back from Houston right now, this is Big Mac, and he won the competition right here in Albany. At least 100 people showed up for this tour to address the problems that the east and the south sides of Albany face. Residents also came to share what they think needs to be done.
I heard John say that this project may not get done in our lifetime. I'm looking for different. I don't know about you.
I'm looking for different.
I ain't waiting my lifetime. I believe we can do this thing.
The tour began at the Government Center and then moved to a residential neighborhood on the south side of Albany. The goal for the tour was to shed light on what is really happening to parts of Albany that are poverty-stricken.
For those that are not resident of East Albany, the south side, the west side, the north side, the problems that we'll encounter now, if we don't do something, it's going to get worse.
The main stop in this tour was a residential area that many would say need the most help in the city. When the tour was finished, residents were invited to voice their concerns, and many chose to ask about solutions.
I believe, intentionally exposed to mold, pesticides, Wisdom TC flowable, air conditioning poisoning by One Key Realty in HUD and Albany Housing Authority. Yes. Nobody did anything about it. As I reached out to all you guys.
Well, we need to pay more attention to the safety hazards and also holding the rightful people accountable in the areas that we need to be upgraded.
While there is no immediate solution to the problems on the east side, city leaders say they're committed to bring change to the city and for its residents. Riley Armant, WALB, your hometown news source. It's been 60 years since Martin Luther King Jr. marched alongside thousands of Black Americans and allies to gather at the Washington Monument. 250,000 people stood for equal rights, access to jobs, and voter rights for Black people in the United States. A few of those people hailed from the small city of Albany, Georgia. But unknown to most, that small city had a larger impact on a movement that changed the nation. Before delivering the famous I Have a Dream speech, Martin Luther King Jr. heard about a movement that was going on in South Georgia. From there, the Good Life City became the training ground for the largest civil rights movement in history.
The real story is Albanians had begun a movement. What Dr. King brought to the movement was his celebrity status.
The Albany movement began in August of 1961 with desegregation and voting rights for Black people being the overall goal. Two prominent organizations, the NAACP and the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, came together to take the first steps toward equal rights for Black people in Albany. However, these efforts and Dr. King were met with pushback from both white and Black people.
Banks were tied into the churches, where their loans were tied into the bank, so they thought about protesting, thought about doing something, they would get their bank loans defaulted on.
Still, the ones who were brave enough to make the change persisted. Albany activist Frank Wilson was a teenager when the movement began, so his participation was limited in the movement.
I was here in Albany. I was attending summer school at Monroe High School. So I really got an opportunity to go to some of the mass meetings, participate in some of the marches.
In December of 1961, MLK traveled to Georgia and spent 8 months learning about what works and what doesn't from Black people in Albany. One of the most important tools he picked up was music. Songs and the voices of the freedom singers would become the force to carry Black Americans through the entire civil rights movement.
I sang during the mass meetings, and my voice was heard, and I was chosen to become one of the original freedom singers.
The songs were meant to uplift spirits and help people continue to move forward in the literal face of their oppressors.
The songs of the civil rights movement played a very vital role. that kept us from being afraid.
Ruth's voice carried her across the United States, eventually landing her on the Washington Monument on August 28th, 1963.
How does it feel to be a part of history and to know that you had a voice in changing the way society works?
I feel humble. I have so many different feelings about it, because I never knew that participating in the civil rights movement, singing the songs, would take me to places I've never gone.
Riley Armant, WALB, your hometown news source.